Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to start by taking a look at 10 positions, and I just want you to decide what side of the board would you expand on? What side of the board would you attack on? Left, right, the center, and of course then we're going to dive into each one of them to make sure we're on the same page. So take a moment. They are going to go by fast, but feel free to pause each one of them and take as long as you need. Come up with your next move, your next idea or plan, and then we will continue. All right, if you already did that, then welcome back to the three rooms method. We're going to focus in room number 2 now, and as we continue with this series, we're going to talk about all the different elements in each one of the rooms so that we're comfortable with our game. Now, we're going to begin by saying that when it comes to deciding, when we're done with room number 1, we're done with the opening and everything that we have to do there, then in room number 2, one of the main decisions we have to make is, am I going to expand on the king side, the queen side, the center, and a few things to consider. One of them has to do with the enemy king. Is the enemy king in the center, left, right? And I'll give you an example. Take a look at, let's say the white pieces here, castle to the left, and then the black king castles to the right. If I show you what the engine recommends here, the top move is going to be pawn to g4. Why? Because this is automatically opposite side castling. We should start sending our pawns that way to expose the enemy king and checkmate it. If we don't do this, then they're going to do it to us. Our king is going to get exposed and we will have to defend. So opposite side castling, if you have no idea, go back to lesson number, I want to say 58 through 61 or 62, and you get the hang of it. Now the other thing is, if instead, like let's say I castle to the right, my opponent castles to the left, also the best move is going to be, or at least the recommendation by the engine is going to be something along the lines of attacking on the left side. That's where the enemy king is. So I'll be thinking of a4 a5, b4 b5, or in this case the computer is saying knight to b5, attacking this pawn, and maybe we play c4, where our rook or rooks, any of the rooks, could get on the same file as the enemy king. So we have this first element, and of course let me actually go back here, and let's say I castle and my opponent leaves the king in the center. Maybe they do something like knight back to f6. In this case, then you can see how the top recommendation is pawn to e4. If I castled quickly, I develop my pieces quickly, I'm ready to attack, my opponent's king stayed in the center, I should expand, I should try to open up the position so that I attack that king in the center. Of course, this doesn't mean that if you do it, you win the game, but it's going to help you get a better and easier game. All right. Now, with that said, let me go all the way back here. So you already know one of the elements is where the king is located. The moment I'm done with room number 1, I'm ready to go and attack, do what we have to do in room number 2. And I'm going to pay attention to the enemy king. That's one of the things. With this in mind, as an illustration, let's take a look at one of the positions that I had you work on earlier. So I'm playing this game. I realize I already castled. My opponent's king is still in the center. So I try to open up lines towards the enemy king, right? So they're happy that they're putting pressure down the h file. I'm not concerned yet. They only have one rook putting pressure. So I go ahead and I play pawn to c4. Just trying to undermine those pawns in the center. Next move by my opponent, knight to e4. Then I go bishop to d2, just completing development. That's one of the main elements in room number 1. And then of course, after knight f6, notice how my opponent is bringing more pieces to attack my king. And I continue to go towards their king that is in the center. Now, after knight e5, my opponent moves the king to the queen side, to the left. So my eyes go to that side of the board, and right or wrong, I go with the move pawn to b4. Why? Because, I went too far. So pawn to b4, because I understand my opponent's king is on the left. I'm going to do everything I can to expose that king. Now, the engine didn't love my move, but at least I was consistent with the plan, what I should do. In this position, they cannot, or they should not even take that pawn. It looks like a free pawn, and it is a free pawn, but they shouldn't do it because I'll be ready to activate my rook, put more pressure on the king. But also there is a fork on f7. Now, I did not even see that fork. I did not think of any of that. I just thought to myself, with their king on the left side, I have to do everything I can to attack on that side of the board. So bishop a5, pawn to c5, anything that has to do with the queen side. Of course, this is hanging, but you get the idea, right? Now, just to show you a little bit how the game continued, they took on c4. I'm going very quickly because the objective of this video is to talk about the initial decision, right? But the moment they came over to attack me, I kicked them out, and then I continued to make contact. I take, trying to open up the king. They blocked it. Now, a new point of contact to expose that king, and then I keep putting pressure until finally I had the opportunity to sacrifice the rook, expose the enemy king. My queen is ready to come in, so they had to give some material, and we just had the opportunity to checkmate the king. So that's it. But it all began with that position that I showed you, where my opponent castled to the enemy, to the left, and I had to be consistent with it. Here we have another position where we are in the middle game. We have to make a move, and the decisive element is enemy king still in the center. So what do? If I ask the engine actually says pawn to f6, and that's exactly what was played in this game. My opponent's king is in the center. I want to remove this cluster of pawns so that I can attack it. And in the game, you'll see that they play c4. Okay, you're attacking my knight. I gotta move back to safety. But then when you take, I'm happy to take back with the pawn, because that opens up, it clears the way towards the enemy king. My opponent violated this principle of rule number 2, which is put the king in safety. Now, after pawn to f5, they're trying to go for my king, but I remembered, look, there's a reason why you got to attack me so quickly. What is it? Oh, you had to compromise something, and you skipped the part where you castled the king. So I go for it, they take. Now this bishop is pinned, so pawn to f5. They take again. I don't want to expose my king and allow them to attack me, so I'm going to hide. And now the attention is back on the white king. This bishop is trapped. After bishop e3, think of what you would play. There's so many ways to win here. Some people might think queen e3 followed by rook e4. Some people might think rook e4. Some people might think queen to b4 and then you collect. But the point is, because our king is in the center, we decided to focus on striking the center of the board, open it, and go for it. And if it didn't make any of these doesn't make sense, please let me know in the comments. Again, these moves are not like guaranteed things are gonna go your way. We're just trying to make it easy for us to continue and to attack in the side of the board where we have the better conditions. So we already talked about the king's position as an element to decide where to expand, where to attack. I gave you a couple examples. Next, let's talk about another very important element, which is the pawn chain in the center. Notice how in this very popular opening, the French defense, we have this variation of the advanced variation, where immediately the center is locked, and then each side is going to pick where they want to attack. There's not much to do in the center, so you gotta pick a flank. And typically you wanna look at your pawn chain in the center. Look, in this case for white, it is aiming at the king side, so you should be trying to expand there. Your pieces, your actions should be on the king side. If you look at it from black's perspective, their pawn chain in the center is aiming at the queen side, so they should be playing on the queen side with all of their pieces. And the reason being is you have more space on that side of the board, so you should be focusing there. Now, something very interesting here, if I activate this little feature here on Lichess, it shows you the top moves according to the engine, and you can see automatically from the moment e5 is played. Top move is c5. Look, I'm only gonna click what the theory recommends, right? c3. Notice how everything black plays is on the queen side because of their pawn structure, and it's all about putting pressure on that pawn on d4 on the queen side. After knight f3, the white pieces play on the king side, and then bishop d7. See, nothing is happening for them on this side of the board. Bishop e2, white plays on the left, and then knight developing the knight, knight a3, take the pawn, and then knight goes to f5 to put pressure on that pawn that is on the queen side for the black pieces. And very important, something that I didn't mention because I've talked about it so many times in the chessable course counter blow in this channel. Notice how they played c5 because we are supposed to say, okay, my pawn chain is aiming at the queen side. I need to target the pawn in front of my most forward pawn. This is my most forward pawn. I'm going to target this pawn by playing c5 and undermine it. So that's basically what they did. They take knight f5, knight c2. Look, next move, queen b6. Everything on the queen side, putting a lot of pressure on that pawn. Castle, then rook c8, everything happening on the queen side. And then you can see here how the best moves for black are, for white, are gonna be king h1 happening on the king side, or simply g4 attacking on that side of the board, expanding on that side of the board. Now, I'm not gonna show you the remaining of the game, but you can see how there are a lot of very strong players here, 26, 2700s, following this, and it is based mainly on the pawn structure. The pawn structure is the infrastructure of the board. The roads, the highways are determined, open, closed, because of the pawn moves. So something else to consider when you get into room number 2, the middle game. So with that said, when you saw this position, I hope you paid attention to the pawn chain in the center for white, and you determined, you know what, I don't even know what the next move is specifically, but I know that I have to play on the right side of the board, on the king side. Now, if I activate the engine, the recommendation is going to be pawn to g4. And of course, it's consistent with the king side. I'm guessing they want to play g5, h4. Very important. I understand the white king is being exposed by doing that. But since the center is locked in place, we're not afraid of these pieces attacking the enemy king. So that's very specific to when the center is locked. No one is coming over. At least it won't be easy to bring all of their pieces to attack us. Now, another move that you should have considered is straight up knight to h4, and you can see how it is consistent. It maintains the advantage just to play f4 and f5. Remember that principle of, okay, center is locked, pawn chain aiming at the right. I want to target the pawn in front of my most forward pawn. This is my most forward pawn. I would like to target this pawn. So knight h4 would allow you to quickly play f4, f5, make contact, and maybe you could even play f6 and expose the king right away. Of course, if I talk about this topic, I have to bring up one of my peers' King's Indian defense positions straight out of counterblow. And here, this is one of those where, again, the center is locked, and I need to look at my pawn chain. It is aiming at the king side, so I'm going to try to expand on the king side. And that's the reason why the engine here would say f5 is the best move. f5, and basically I'm making contact with the pawn in front of my most forward pawn. Then all of my pieces will try to attack on the king side. Once more, it's not like this is the only way. It's just the right of the side of the board where you have better conditions. And that's why it should be easier if you expand on this side of the board. It's not guaranteed that you're going to win. It doesn't mean that you cannot play maybe c6. It's just that if you look at the white position, then their pawn chain is saying, I have more space on the queen side. My pieces are aiming at that side of the board. Why would I, as black, why would I want to mess with that part of the board, right? But just keep that in mind. The next element is going to be piece concentration. Now, if you look at this board, for example, this is a very strong player, Bogoljubov playing as white. If you split the board in half, notice how the center is locked. Notice how his pawn chain in the center is aiming at the queen side. But when you look at the piece concentration, if you split the board in half, on the right, the white pieces have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces versus 1. So this is like playing basketball and having 3 players versus 1, right? You should score. Now, if you look on the left, of course, they have almost all of their pieces on the left side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we got only 3 pieces on the left side. So even though the pawn chain is telling us, you know what, you got more space on the queen side, we have more pieces on the king side. So it makes sense to play on the king side. And if I activate the engine, the computer is recommending king to h2, Bogojubov played pawn to g4, consistent, not king h2, but consistent with playing on the king side. So keep in mind, we have enemy king's position, we have the pawn chain, especially when the center is locked, and then piece concentration. So these are just guidelines to keep in mind. We have to make that decision. Now, just to show you a few more moves, not the whole thing. After knight a4, we got knight to f5. Notice how black makes progress or expands on the queen side because they have more pieces there, while the white pieces go towards the king side. Now, very important, this is happening on the sides once more because there's nothing to do for any of us in the center. It is dead, it is locked. So we gotta pick a flank, and you want to pick the one. You wanna pick the neighborhood where you do better. If you go into the wrong neighborhood, you could get in trouble. So there you have it. And the final positions are going to be mainly about situations where you have a combination of more than one factor. Like for example, in this position, you can see how the black pieces, the pawn chain in the center is aiming at the right or to the queen side. So it makes sense to play there. I also have the bishop aiming at that side of the board. I have a semi-open file for my rook. My queen could come over. So the conditions are very easy for me to play on that side of the board. So you have two. You got pawn chain in the center aiming to that side of the board. But also if I split the board in half, on the right, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And my opponent has only 1, 2, and 3. While on the left, I have only 2 pieces. And my opponent has 1, 2, and 3, right? So just to show you, in this game I continued with rook to b8, very logical move. Then we got we got rook a to d1. Then I want to get my queen out to the queen, well, I'm on the queen side, but to develop it, activate it, either b6, either b6 or a5, but this pawn is hanging. So I took a moment to play rook to e8, and then after b3, finally queen a5, and then after rook e1, there is a tactic. This lesson is not about tactics, but feel free to pause the video if you want to try to find it. And of course, you got a few options here. If you thought knight e6, attacking this bishop and opening up your bishop to get the knight, that's pretty good. If you thought of knight b3, getting a pawn with a hit on the queen, attacking this knight, that's pretty good. If you thought of knight e2, not good because the knight leaves, and then even if you take, they could take back with the bishop, you didn't win anything. But the absolute best move, and I'm proud that I found it in the game, is queen taken on c3. From time to time we get lucky and we find the right move. And then when they take, you do a discovery, you get a bishop, and then you collect the queen right back. So basically you have an extra knight at the end of that transaction. But it all began with listening to our pawn chain and looking at our piece concentration and playing on that side of the board. I've done this in other games and I've lost anyways, but that's where we have the better chances. Now, this is another position where we have the same thing, a combination of more than one factor. We have a pawn that we don't have necessarily the pawn chain aiming at the king side, but we have a powerful pawn on e5, which gives us more space on the king side, which keeps the enemy knight from coming over to defend the king. And also, if we split the board in half, you can see how we have 1, 2, 3 pieces on that side of the board, and our opponent has only 1 defender. So the ratio attackers defenders is gonna make our life easier. And if we attack on the right side, and if I activate the engine, notice how you see we have knight h2 with the idea of opening up the queen, bringing that knight closer to the enemy king. We could even at the right time do some sort of rook lift to bring the rooks over to attack the enemy king. Again, no idea if this is going to be decisive, winning, but it is consistent with playing on the right side of the board where you have better conditions, the king side in this case for the white pieces. This final position is a bonus. In this one, I'm playing as black, I'm getting destroyed, my opponent gave me such a hard time, and they just castled to the opposite side, to the queen side, right? Now, this is a tricky one because anyone would think, well, now that you castled to the queen side, I should go with everything I've got and attack that king. But the thing is, when I look at the position and I actually split the board in half, I realize I only have 2 attackers on that side of the board. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. So even if I go with everything I've got, if I attack the enemy king, I won't be able to accomplish anything. So I was able to understand that and instead switch gears and go over and defend. Now, again, getting destroyed, but proud to at least see that I played losing, but I played the best defensive move or the best move in this position. Queen to e5, forget about attacking, transfer the queen from the right to the left and get ready to defend. That's it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. At least we just want to get comfortable with these ideas, just like you have gotten comfortable with the tactical patterns, the forks, the pins, the skewers. We gotta get comfortable with this as well. Now I'm gonna show you just a few more moves for you to see how this continued. My opponent plays rook to g1. Look at the advantage is 2.5. I'm almost done here, but again, I keep bringing pieces over to defend. Just defend. That's it. Nothing wrong with it. Acknowledge it. My opponent plays 94, and you see, just in one move, I've been on both sides of the fence, 94, and the evaluation changed. Now, I did not even calculate here. I'm just thinking, one brand new attacker coming towards my king. Nope, get rid of it. And then 94, just trying to block the queen, trying to hit something. And by the way, that was a mistake on my end too. I was winning at some point by 1.4. I should have played knight f4 right now, but I didn't see it. So I took knight f4 now, but then my opponent in this tricky position played knight f5, and feel free to take a moment and think of what you'd play next. This is now completely winning for black, and I didn't miss it this time. And of course I'm thinking, if I'm attacking this rook, well, I'm going to give you mine, and then I could collect it back, and I'm up a knight. Now, better was to take it with a fork, but I didn't see it. I was set to just take this one. And so I did. They took me. I'm thinking, look, it's only a rook. You're not gonna checkmate me unless I go to the wrong square and then the queen comes in. That will be one more attacker. But if you go to the right square, they have no check. And then finally, I just took a moment to get rid of the queens. And like we've talked about in the most recent videos, this would transfer us from room number 2 into room number 3, where all I'm thinking about is activate the king, collect pawns, and then once I get a passed pawn, then the rest is going to be easy. That's it. I have the extra knights, take, bring the king over, and then whatever they do, they resigned at this point, but whatever they do, I'm going to get this pawn, and then our passed pawn is going to win. So that's finishing the game in room number 3. I hope all of these positions helped somehow. Feel free to go over it again and again and again. And I know it's not going to be enough. We got to reinforce it over and over and over, but that's just part of the process. And this is one more step into getting better at or perfecting the art of room number 2. With that said, talk to you in the comments. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in our next video.